You're like,
Yeah, I said
oh,
okay.
she clicked it. Hey, hey, how you doing? I'm James Wright, and welcome to my shop. I love these intros. They're always fun when you do them live.
Wait,
You never
hang
know
on.
what you're gonna get.
Hang on, you're blank.
I'm blank. Oh, am I ghosting again?
Yes.
Let me go click it. Gotta love the cheap technology. Let me flip this over just a moment. So, welcome to the Wood by Wright YouTube channel, and this is where things always are fun. Plug that back in, and hey, look at that, we're back. Just gotta change the signal over. So, tonight.
It's overhead.
Yeah, I gotta
Okay.
grab this one. Tonight we're gonna be doing how to sharpen anything. And so we're gonna be going through a bunch of options of sharpening spokeshaves and chisels and things of that nature. And I want to kind of leave it up to you guys to see what do you want to see sharpened. And we will go through as many things as we can get through. But if you have something particular you want to be sharpening, you want me to sharpen, you can go and vote for it. And there is a link that my wife is putting in the chat. It's probably been there 7 or 8 times. And so you can go over there. It is the community section on YouTube. And it is the top thing on there. And so what you can do is you can go into the comments on that top one that says, what do you want to vote on? And put something in the comments. And then thumbs up for all of the items that you want to see voted for. And the options with the most thumbs up, that's what we will choose. I would love to figure out a live polling session. But YouTube used to have one that worked phenomenally, and then they outsourced it. And so one of these days we might be able to get a live polling thing set back up. But until then,
hang on, I broke it. So.
She broke it. So yeah, go to that link and vote for what do you want to see sharpened. And I think I'm actually going to be starting with spokeshaves because that is one that is kind of difficult. A lot of people, you know, a chisel or a plane, it's fairly simple. It's just a piece of metal that comes to a point and you can sharpen it up. Whereas with a spokeshave, the blade is a lot smaller and can be hard to hold on to. And I want to get into that. But before we get into that, we're going to talk about the theory behind sharpening. Sharpening is a really easy thing once you break it down and you understand what it is. All it is taking a metal and taking one plane and another plane and bringing those planes into as small a point as possible. And the way you get to that small point is you start with a large grit, which gets you close to it, and every finer and finer grit gets you closer and closer to that until you're on a strop or a polishing stone or something of that nature that actually brings it down to something really nice and fine. That being said, there are times where you don't need it really nice and fine. A relatively sharp blade will do the trick, and there are times when you're working with a carving tool where it's got to be really sharp. So I'm going to be taking you through that. And then there's also the idea of sharpening versus honing. Sharpening for me is I nicked it or I chipped something and I need to rework it. So I'm actually going to take it through a whole series of steps to get it sharp. If I'm working at the bench, I will regularly be using a strop and honing my tools, 20, 30 strokes and I'm back at it. And I don't have to think about it. I'm only going to be using the very finest of fine to get it and keep it sharp. So most of the time I'm going to be showing people how to sharpen it. You know, there's a nick in it. You've got to do some reworking. You've got to rehone the bevel. And I'm going to be taking people through those steps. If it's something that you keep on top of, then you're just doing that last step of honing or using the strop. So go to that link and vote for what you want to be sharpened. Comment in that thread with what you want to see sharpened or thumbs up the comment if it's already there. So my wife will be keeping an eye on that.
Apparently, if you're on mobile devices, you can't vote.
See, there's another problem. And I've been trying all sorts of different methods to try and make a live voting session. Because I can put it on there where I can have people can vote for things, but they can only vote up to 5 items. And there's a lot more than 5 items here. So I tried doing it on Facebook, but then that limited it as well. Or then I could do it on my Facebook channel, but I could only have 2 items. So one of these days we'll figure something out. But to start with, I'm going to actually start with spokeshaves because that is one of the most common ones I've gotten. And I've got to take this apart with a screwdriver and show you basically what I do. It's a fairly simple method, as long as I can get the screw out. Oh my. Wow, that was in there tight. It's been a while since I've taken this one out. I guess that's why it's time to sharpen it. Just going to pull out the blade. Wow, that is tight. It has been a long time since I've sharpened this one. I don't use this one as much, mainly because it was dull. And I've got so many spoke shaves, if one of them is dull, then I just grab one of the other ones. But this one is loaded with junk right now and difficult to get out. Come on, work with me. Oh, that's why. Just gotta be smarter than the tool. So let's actually get a closer look at this one. You see if I'm actually focused in here. Oh, for a cam man.
Or woman. Let's not discriminate.
We actually took the table upstairs. Yeah, let me show you.
Yeah, I love how that you didn't lead with that.
I know.
Like the biggest news of the year.
No table. It is now upstairs.
But we couldn't use it today. Isn't that sad? We couldn't even eat at it.
We put the finish on it. So I need to let it sit for 24 hours.
Take pictures with food on it. Oh no, I work tomorrow.
Videos will be coming out
Friday. I can't even cook and put food on it until Friday.
On these, there are two planes, and you have one that's the flat side, and then you have two that is the beveled side, and the bevel is the angle. And you should work both angles. Now, if you have developed a flat side, you know the back is flat and true, then you're just going to be cleaning up the back side every now and then, and basically just working on the bevel. And in this case, if I slide my finger up from this side up, I'm going to feel that there's a burr. There's a place where the steel actually wraps around and burrs into it. And that means that I need to start by flattening this out. So I use diamond plates because they're always flat. And I'm just going to start with the coarsest one here, which is somewhere around 600 grit. The diamond grits do not compare to stone grits, so try not to make those mixed up. Grab a rag, and I'm going to see if I still feel that burr on the back. And I do still feel that burr. So I'm also going to flip it over here, and I notice that this is, let's see if you guys can see this. Let me out. Yes, portion, there we go. I don't know if you can see this, but it's grinding right here and not touching up here at the tip. Now there's two possibilities, two things I can fix with this. Number one, I can keep going until the scratches come all the way up to the tip. Or number two, I can do a slight, quick modification, which is what I'm going to do in this one, because it really doesn't matter on this that the back is completely flat. Now I could spend a long time and really flatten out this whole thing, or I can take a piece of tape, put it here in the back, and I'll use the thickness of the tape to lift up this side and grind more on the tip. So, and I know a lot of people are freaking out right now that I'm doing this, but oh well. It's kind of like the ruler trick, if you know what I'm talking about. There, now we're getting scratches coming up all the way into the front. And I have scratches here and scratches here, but I'm missing a little bit here in the middle. Not a problem, we'll work on that a little more. And this is sharpening. I'm actually getting completely into this. And normally I'm not going to be doing this once it's set up right. Don't need to mess with it then. Almost. Need a little bit more. Just going to clean that off. You'll notice all this black dirt on here. That is actually the steel shavings from the blade that we're sharpening.
Why is your shop so cold tonight?
I don't know, it feels good to me.
Oh, I'm freezing.
Sorry, babe.
It's not helping my back either.
And then, wow, that one still needs a little more. Okay. And if you want to see these diamond plates that I'm using, I have a link to them on my website. If you go to woodbywright.com and you look at tools on the top, I actually have all the tools that I suggest. And so I have a list of all of these. This is coarse, medium, or I think they switched it to now just fine and then extra fine. Here, I'm going to speed this up a little bit. I have this one, which is an extra coarse, or I think it's extra coarse. And this will grind it off a little bit faster. There we go. There. Now we can take it onto this one. This will polish it down just a little bit more. Sharpen it up. And then I'm making sure that the scratch patterns from one pass on to the other. Then we'll go on to this one. Do the same thing on here. And then I should have a well-developed back or flat to this. Once that back is nice and trustworthy, then we can focus on the bevel. And this is basically where it's going to stay most of the time. If I slide my finger on here, I don't feel any burr at all on the back of this. I feel all the burr is now on the bevel side. Now,
I want more.
What?
It made me think of the old commercial. I want more.
Oh,
if anyone remembers that commercial.
So now we need to focus on the bevel side. And this is where people often have a problem of how do you hold this little thing. And particularly on this one is at least a little larger. If I go back to this Spokeshave, the blade, well, I'm not going to take it out right now. The blade is really just this tiny little piece. So it's only like a 3/4 inch wide piece. And this becomes a little tricky for people to hold. I'm just going to take my time, set it on there, and I'm going to use my fingernail. I'm actually going to let my fingernail wrap underneath the iron, and I'm going to let my fingernail slide on the stone. And that's the way I generally do it. And I'll just check and make sure that my scratch pattern is where it needs to be. Need to lift it up a little bit more. And then I'm just checking the scratch pattern on the nose to see that that's what it needs. And then I'll go through the grits just like that. Oh, here, let me show you a trick that I just saw the other day. Actually, it was Paul Sellers just put up.
Whoa.
Sorry?
That was a strange close-up of you.
You like my nose hairs? I've got to grab a tool that I almost never use. But I saw it and thought I'd show you. Except for I don't have it. Where did my... Oh, there they are. Vice grips. This is something that Paul Sellers actually just showed, I think in an Instagram video, is you can use this as he calls it, the poor man's sharpening jig. And so what I can do is clamp this. I'll set this on here at its bevel, and then I'll use this to tighten it up a little bit more.
Okay.
I can use this to set as a honing guide to that degree. And then just let it slide on the back of the vice grips. And I think that's actually a pretty smart idea. I haven't had too much time to play with it, but it's basically a cheap honing guide. Yeah, you're going to wear a little bit on your vice grips, but oh well.
Same.
And so let's actually play with this. A lot of people have problems with spokeshaves, and so if this fixes that problem for most people, then it would be worth it. That's actually looking really good. And then I'll take it out of that. I never use the honing guide strop. I just don't like gumming it up with that. 30 or 40 strokes on the strop. I'll do it a few less this time. And I'm going to buff the back of it. I'll switch it back over to this beveled side. Buff the back. And we should be pretty close to a nice sharp blade. Can you look at what people are voting for?
Yeah, in just a second. But I have a question on that. Fantastic Mr. Fox asked, will that trick work with all plain blades?
No. The reason being is that most plain blades are longer. And so if you're clamping this farther back on it, then the bevel angle is so low, you'd be putting like a 10-degree bevel angle on it. And this will shave the hair nice like. Happiness. So there's your Spokeshave blade, ready for the next piece of work. And for this, I'm just going to clean out the dirt inside first. chips that got wedged in there. Just going to slide this in place. And with this particular one, I'm going to pull it back farther than it needs to go and clamp it down. And then I'm going to use a plane adjusting mallet to adjust the tip in. And with this particular one, you can actually use this spring on the back to open and close the mouth. But let me grab my mallet, which is missing. Oh, there it is. And then I'm going to tap on the back. Hit it. Until it gets up into the mouth. And I'm actually just going to be feeling it with my finger, just like I do with a plain blade. Adjust it until it's nice and balanced. And there, that's ready to go. So that is the general how-to of a spoke shave. I think I kind of like this honing guide for teaching, but most of the time I'm still just going to freehand it because it's quicker and I don't have to mess with it. So, yeah. What we got, babe?
Hang on, I'm making a comment.
Hang on.
No, William Lyle says, "You look elegant, Sarah," not James, and I had to say thank you for clarifying in case we...
She usually looks far more elegant than you.
No, it's just I have a bright color on that's not stripes tonight. Oh. All right, so hang on, let me refresh. I think I know who the next, because there were several that were the same, but I did go through the comments to see if that would have bumped up. No, I said I wouldn't, and I will repost.
Some people don't like to read.
I gotta repost the link too. I gotta repost the link too. But I think the next one is card scraper, curved and not curved.
Okay. Now I do have an entire video on sharpening card scrapers, and particularly I spend the time with the curved card scraper because I sharpen both the exact same way. Now, particularly, the card scraper is the one weird thing because it's not like a chisel or a plane blade where you just simply are filing the two together to make a point.
What did he just
trying
say?
To find his phone. Rather than creating a sharp edge or a bevel, what you're actually going to do is basically, if you imagine taking this card and you take the top and you squish the top down, it's going to push it out and kind of mushroom over on either side. That mushroom is actually going to create a little bit of a burr that sticks out, and that's a hook on the side that then you can use to scrape the wood with. So you're creating a bevel, but the bevel is this tiny little hook that sticks off the side rather than a bevel that you're shining down. So to do that, you need to start with perfectly flat edges. So I'm going to take this back to my stones. Now, I've got a bevel that's completely bad, and I can't re-burnish it back out. So I'm going to clean off all of the edges. So let's go back over here to the plates. And most of the time, I'm just going to be working here on the finest plate I have. I'm going to set this on here flat, and I'm going to flatten out one face, flip it over, flatten out the other face, and then I'm going to flatten out the top face. Now sometimes I'm going to come in here with a file, a very fine file, and I'm going to use that, keeping it perfectly flat, and I'll run that around the rim. I'm going to do the exact same thing with a flat card scraper. I'll just run that on there flat. And for these blue ones like I sell, what I'll end up doing is rather than running them flat because you wear the blue off of it, I'll just put a piece of tape on there. And just like I did before, I will flatten it with that tape on there. That protects the blue surface so they still look cool. My wife is laughing. This is not a good thing. But most of the time, because we want to do a face, but we also want to do that thin edge. So we're going to take this, and I'm just going to rock it on here, keeping it 90 degrees to the plate. And this is something you don't really want to do with a whetstone, but with a diamond it's perfectly fine. And if you're working here on the inside, you kind of have some problems there. And sometimes I'll just stick with the file and flatten it out with a file, though it's always going to be a little bit rougher on those insides. So now that this is smooth, let me make sure. Actually, no, I'm going to clean this up because it's a bit rough on the outside here.
I can't wait till you go back through these comments.
There's some good ones in there today.
Well, let's just say we took a hard left and we're not sure we're coming back.
Here, let's actually clean this one up completely because it's pretty bad. So I'm going to use a file here to smooth it out. There are a bunch of nicks in here, and honestly, just using this file like this will mushroom it over and give you a hooked edge. It'll be a really rough, heavy edge, but sometimes I will use that for the really rough work. I'll do that, and then I'll come back in and I'll clean it up, and that cleaned up edge will then give you a finer hook, a smaller hook. Yeah, see, that's what I'm looking for. It's a really nice smooth edge all the way across there. So now we can actually get into the burnishing. And I'm going to do the exact same thing with a card scraper. If I have it on here, I'm just going to keep it at 90 degrees and smooth out the front edge. Now for a burnisher, some people will use a knife steel like you'd have in the kitchen. It works perfectly fine. I like to use a piece of carbide. There we go, carbide steel rod. It just has to be something harder than the steel. And the steel on these are fairly soft. Some people will use a file with a safe edge, an edge that's smooth, so it doesn't have the filing marks on it. You just need a piece of steel that is harder than your card. And so I'm going to keep this at 90 degrees to the card, and I'm just going to run over. The more pressure I can put on it at this point, the better. But because it's rounded, I can put a lot of pressure up here at the top, and I get off here to the side, and it becomes a problem. So sometimes I'll do these short strokes, keeping some pressure on there. And in this case, it's starting to curl it over. It's more or less mounding the top of this. I want to take that mound and I want to draw it into a hook. So with this steel rod, rather than keeping it at 90 degrees, I'm going to tip it ever so slightly, just 5 to 10 degrees. Don't really care what that angle is precisely. And I'm also going to pull it across the card this way. So as I move it this way, I'm going to be pulling it out. So I'll start here. And what this does is it pulls that mushroomed top to the side. Then I can flip it over the other way, keeping it at that similar angle. And I'm just going to do 20 or so strokes this way. And now I can feel it. I have a tiny, tiny little hook here running all the way along this. So here, I'll do it with my bench here. I'm going to make a lot of people really scream here. I'm actually going to scrape my bench.
Well, it'll be silent.
And so you can see the curls now from that edge. Funny little curls.
I was just thinking, instead of carbonite, if you use kryptonite, you would cripple.
Yeah,
would you cripple Superman in your shop, and you would be then able to subdue Superman?
There you go. So that is sharpening the card scraper. Now there are 1,000 ways to sharpen a card scraper, and if you look on YouTube and find videos out there, everyone is going to have a different method of doing it. And I usually say, find the method that works for you. And the only way that you're going to find the method that works for you is you're going to try a bunch of them. And then eventually one of them is going to click. And one of them you get that wispy shaving. And it's like, oh, that works. You won't know until you try it. I really like Matt Cremona's video on it. He does a good one. He uses a slightly different method than mine. He uses a little bit lighter pressure to do his. I like Bearcat Woodworking. His video is really good as well. I actually have his card scraper. He's the one who gave me the idea of the carbide steel rod. So definitely check those out. But once you find a method that works with a card scraper, it is a complete game changer for the shop. Suddenly the card scraper is something you're using all the time. Saves you from sanding, and it's a fun tool to have. But I mean, it's the exact same thing whether you're doing it round or square. These are just a little bit easier to hold things, whereas with the rounded edge, you're kind of running around it. The nice thing about the rounded edge is you're usually only using a small section of the card because you're finding something that matches that round edge. And so I'm only going to be sharpening that small section. And so if I'm working on something that's like this radius, I'm going to be sharpening from here to here. So rarely are you going to be sharpening the whole thing because you're usually only using a portion of it. Do we have another one?
Yeah, well, we have a couple questions related to that.
Okay.
So there was questions as to where do you get a carbide rod, and some people have talked about McMaster and Amazon, and so
I think I have a link to them. Actually, I don't think I put that on my my website yet. I should do that. I got mine on Amazon. The cheapest place I've found to buy them is through Bearcat Woodworking. If you go to his website, he sells them and sells them relatively cheaply. But I got it on Amazon. It's like $16 for a 1/4-inch rod. But the problem is...
That's not a nice super chat.
What?
I have to sharpen something. Alan! Thought you were my friend!
What do you mean? She is sharp.
That's
She's the sharpest one in the room.
Oh, good save! Good save! I knew I liked you.
I'm the dull one.
There's your dad joke. No, we'll figure it out. We'll
make her sharpen something here.
Yeah. And then I think a couple of people have asked what brand and how much your stones cost that you were using earlier.
They are DMT stones, and if you want to see the ones I have, go to my website, woodbywright.com tools, and you will see links to the specific ones that I use. There are several other knockoffs, and I have to say I have not been impressed with the cheaper ones. They dull very quickly. I've had these for almost 3 years now. I have a friend who has them who's been using them for 6 or 7 years. The DMTs last phenomenally. The really coarse ones, those will wear out because the aggregate is bigger. But for the fine ones, they'll last you for a long, long time. So it's well worth spending a little bit more on those to get you a plate that will last a long time. But yeah, if you want to see the link to the specific plates I use, go to my website. Cool.
Hang on. I gotta refresh. The link to the tools is in the description. That's what Dom DeBomb.
Oh yes, I did put that in the description. Yeah, yeah. Tools I use. It's down in the description below. You'll see a link there for the.
I got too many screens tonight to look at. All right. Gosh, a lot of them are like really neck and neck, except a couple of them have been in the comments. So I'm gonna combine again.
I will leave it up to your discretion.
Because I know what I'm picking up anyways. Forstner bits, I think.
Forstner bits?
Yeah.
I don't have any Forstner bits.
Okay,
actually.
well that answered that one.
It's not a tool that I use. I find other ways. If I'm cutting something bigger than 1 inch, I use a hole saw because a hole saw actually works really well on a bracing bit. That's my personal preference.
Okay. Let me. There's a lot with 2 likes. Hang on. We'll go with the first one, which is a carving gouge.
Carving gouge. Let me actually get a dull one because most of the time with carving tools, once I have them sharpened, I never let them get dull. Every 4 or 5 minutes, I'm going to be taking them on the strop.
Is that similar to a bowl gouge, just out of curiosity?
No.
Okay.
Well, no, a bowl gouge is a turning chisel.
Gotcha.
So my chisels, my carving tools that I use regularly, I never let them get dull. Every 5 minutes or so, I'm running them on a strop, whether they need it or not, just to keep that edge as sharp as possible. As long as I keep them working on the strop, I don't have to take them back to the stones. It just takes 5 or 6 minutes, 5 or 6 seconds, and they're back into the work, and they stay sharp, and they stay true, and everything is happy. But I do have a bunch that I need to sharpen still, so let me see if I can find one in here that is ready to be sharpened. Here's a hard one. Yeah, and that's a little on the dull side. Okay, I have a tiny veiner here. Actually, let me grab this one out too. A fine gouge and a veiner. A veiner is a gouge where the sidewalls actually come all the way back around or come up. Whereas a gouge, they never quite make it back up to 180 degrees. A veiner, they'll come up to 180 degrees and sometimes go up parallel to each other. Let me show you a little closer view so you can see what I am talking about. Okay, here is a veiner. It's basically a gouge. Focusing on that a little bit better. There we go. And the side walls come up almost parallel with each other. And then I have this gouge here, which is a little bit more normal. Now, most of the time, if I'm going to be using them in normal work, I'm just going to be stropping them. And so I will start at one side, and then I will strop a few strokes there, and I'll slowly turn it a little bit farther, and I'll turn it a little bit farther, and I'll turn it a little bit farther. And each time I'll do 20 or so strokes at each spot. But this one is really dull. So what I need to do is polish the inside as well as the outside. And, oh no, I'm missing my slipstones. Oh, let's see if this one will work. Nope, that's too big. So you have a set of slipstones, but they're not with me right now. And these will help me polish the flat on the inside here. In this case, this one isn't that bad, so I think I can just focus on the bevel and then clean up the inside with a strop. So let me show you what I do for actually sharpening them, as this one needs a good bit of work. I'm going to do the exact same thing I just did on the strop, except for I'm going to do it on the stones. And I'm going to start here at the coarse, then I'm going to go medium, and I'm going to go fine. And in this case, I'm going to lock my arms in place. Here, let me back up and show you this a little bit more.
Whoa.
Sorry. I'm going to kind of lock my arms and my elbows in place, and I'm going to try and move at the ankles. And I'm going to start at one corner, and then I'm going to turn it around to the other corner. I have 2 fingers up here at the front, keeping pressure down on it, and then the other 3 fingers are just underneath, holding it up against my wrist. And so this whole thing is locked into my hand, just like that. 3 fingers underneath, 1 on top. Now I'll add a little bit of weight with my second hand. And I'm just going to slowly rock it from one side to the other.
When do I move up to the top?
And then I'll rock it back. Let's see how this does. Yeah, there we go. Let's see if you guys can actually see this. You can see how it's shiny up there at the tip. This particular one, someone put on like a 5-degree bevel, and the bevel goes from the tip all the way back to like right here. And so what I'm going to do is I'm putting on about a 20-degree bevel. So right now I'm just hitting it right up here at the tip. I don't like having an ultra fine tip on there. And usually what I'm going to end up doing is, you can see how this is so dull and black. I'm usually going to come in here with sandpaper, and I'm going to shine this up until it's really nice and shiny, like one of my normal tools. And usually go with about a 400 grit. That shininess on there actually helps it stay longer. If that makes any sense. Stay longer. Stay sharp longer. I'm going to do the same thing. Take it over here to this next one. The hard part isn't as much sharpening the bevel, but how do you sharpen the inside of a gouge? Because these stones aren't worn. DMT actually makes what they call a wave stone, which is a rippled wave, and so you can actually do the insides on it. I'd like to get one of those, but I never have. One of these days I should, just to experiment with at least. And you can see I'm not spending too much time on any one particular spot. And sometimes on this last one, I'll actually go across it. And so I'll start back here up on one corner, and I'll actually roll the chisel as I get all the way across until I end on the opposite corner. That just stops it from any facets occurring. And then we're going to go to the strop. So the exact same thing you've seen me do overways. I'm going to start in one corner, and then I'm going to roll it over to the other corner.
Can you help?
Is this sounding familiar yet? most every tool. It's just finding a way to do this on everything. There you go. That's nice and shiny. Now the problem is, how do I clean up the inside of this? And for that, I'm going to grab a loose piece of strop, and I'm going to bend it to fit that inside diameter. In this case, it's actually a pretty stiff one. So I'm going to bend this over.
Excuse me.
And then I'm going to strop the inside. Now I have a set of slipstones that allow me to do this stone sharpening like this on the inside here and clean that up. But this one is too large a diameter, and my other ones are elsewhere. And that one's actually looking really good. Here. Yeah, this one's just needing a bit of stropping. It's fairly clean on the inside. And so I'll do a little bit on the inside. Because I gave it a fairly stark sharpening, I'll do a little on the outside. And then I'll do a little more on the inside. And that should be pretty good to go. Let's give it a try. So let's try it with a little bit of walnut. Here, let's see what we can get here. Yeah, this is a weak little chisel. The shaft on this is bending. There's not much steel behind it, but it's curving out nicely. I'm having fun here. Okay, this isn't a sharpening. This isn't a carving video. Otherwise, I'll be carving it this while. But you can see, really nice sharp edge, just like that. And so from here on out, as long as I don't ding this or I don't hurt this, I'm just going to be doing it on the strop, bending this over and shining the inside. Every now and then, it's just 20 or so strokes, and you can keep this sharpening ready. So that's a carving gouge. What else we got?
Okay, hang on. There were a couple questions regarding carving
Cool.
gouges. So, and I am like half paying attention to what you're saying. So,
She's got other things that are more important.
well, yeah, them. Hello.
Like herself.
So, did you talk about repairing nicks and carving gouges? Ravenspath wants to know.
No, but basically, whenever I use these other stones, I am repairing something on the chisel. There is a nick in it, or I need to change the bevel angle. And so it's the exact same thing. If there is a nick in there, you just have to grind it back past that nick. And so usually that means spending a lot of time on your coarsest stone and getting past that nick. And so you're going to be doing that exact same step. And that really sounds painful to a lot of people. But in all honesty, that is where you're going to learn how to sharpen, is grinding the nick out of something, because it's a lot about learning how do you lock your arms into place. How do you keep that momentum the same so you're not scooping the gouge as you're running it. So the more time you spend doing that same repetitive motion, the more your body learns about it. But yeah, taking a gouge out is just sharpening a lot on the coarse stone.
All right. Sorry, there's new things coming in.
Shiny chisel come out.
So, some were saying that if you didn't have the slipstone the right size, a drill bit and sandpaper.
Yeah. Normally the inside, I'm going to get it up to around 1,000 grit. So if you go to your auto body shop, you can get sandpaper there. And then after 1,000 grit, taking it to the strop, you're just going to spend a little more time on the strop the first time. But yeah, if you find a dowel or a drill bit or something round that is the right shape, sandpaper is a great use. That's actually the same way that I sharpen my Stanley 45 and 55s, is I find a dowel or something that's the right size and I'll buff the inside of it with sandpaper. Unless you have a set of slipstones, they make life really easy and they're a lot of fun. Except for they break really easily. Don't ask me how I know.
Wait, sir, I've got it. You can roll.
What?
We're going back to an earlier topic. It wouldn't make sense to you if I told you right now. Let's see. Let's look. We talked about card scrapers.
You should wear leather and stropping compound.
You gotta go back. There's a backstory. Oh, and apparently Alan says that he wants me to do a card scraper, and there was something else he said. Oh, and then try a spokeshave too. It's getting a little. I don't know if 499 will handle both. Definitely the card scraper. I'm still thinking about it, Alan. I don't know if that was a 2-for-1.
I've got a card scraper with your name on it then.
Okay. And let's see. We talked about card scraper. We talked about curving gouges. I think I've seen router plane blade a couple times.
Ooh, a router plane blade. That is a hard one, or at least it seems hard.
And I've failed in my job. I forgot to talk about in your questions list which thing you're sharpening at what time, so you're gonna have to go back through and fix that.
That's fine.
Too much for me to fill. Well.
Okay, yeah, let's do a router blade because
it's my choice. Thanks, Alan.
Really confuses a lot of people because the bevel is on this inside surface and then the flat is out here. And so how do you sharpen that bevel when the thing is bent? That's just like really, really confusing.
Okay, wait, can I ask a question?
What's that?
What would you use that for? The router?
A router is for cutting a parallel surface that is lower than your referenced surface. So if you're
cleaning so you got two pieces of wood like this.
Yes, and one side is lower than the other. It allows you to plane a surface perfectly parallel to the higher surface.
Okay.
So if you have a gouge, if you have a groove or a dado, the blade of this will then stick down inside that dado and make it perfectly parallel with the outside surface. So you can get a really nice smooth bottom to your dado. Or
routering. Thanks, B-Power. Some of us are not visualization people.
So with this sharpening jig, I can pull out the plates on here. And this then makes it really easy to sharpen that. So let me flip this over. And so for doing the bottom side, it's just like doing a plain blade. I'll stick it on here, and I'll stick one finger on the bevel here. Let me change this around so you can see a little bit better. There we go. And so I'm going to put this on here and put my finger back on here. And I'm just going to move this on here. Let me actually just do this. And just like that, I can buff up the flat on the bottom of this. And I'm just putting pressure here on the bevel and sliding that back and forth. The problem comes with how do you sharpen this bevel on here? And that's why I take this plate out. Lift this up a little bit more. There we go. Is then I can put it on the bevel and I can do the same thing here. And I'm not going to put a lot of pressure on it just so that I can hold it in place. But then I'm going to do the exact same thing just over here and hanging inside. And I'm going to go through the grits if I need to. If I don't need to, then I'm usually just going to do this top stone. And then we can take it onto the strop. Again, we're starting to sound really familiar here. And I'm going to do the same thing, except for I'm just pulling back on the strop. Keeping one finger down on the bevel, holding it in place. Then after doing that a few times, I'm going to lift up the strop. And I'm going to pull it off here on the side. One more here. Just checking with my finger. That's what I'm looking for. Yeah, this one's a little small. But it still does the trick.
How you know a woodworker?
Hand tool pattern baldness. Alright, you can say that, sorry. But yeah, there you go. That is how it is done. Don't overthink it too much. Just let it overhang the side and clean it up. So, yeah, and most every tool you're going to come to, it's the exact same steps, the exact same methods. It's just trying to figure out how do you hold the tool. And most tools, there is a jig to hold it for you. But I don't like using jigs because, number one, they take more time. And number two, they take away learning the physical skill of it. And yes, learning to freehand is incredibly painful because it's so easy to mess up. But once you've learned it, it is so easy because you can just grab the tool and sharpen it and be done. You don't have to think about it, and sharpening becomes something that's very quick and very easy. so you do it more often. But if you do want a sharpening jig, the Veritas Mark II is usually the one I recommend. It's kind of pricey, but it is, in my opinion, the best general jig. It won't do things like a router chisel, but it does most things. Like 90% of what you need to sharpen, that does pretty well. So yeah, that's a common one. I should have thought of that one earlier. Got another one? What time is it? 48? We got time for one more.
Okay, hang on. I'm trying to get caught up on a couple things.
I'm keeping her busy tonight.
Yes. Well, and you gotta leave time. You gotta leave time for me to sharpen something too. You know.
Yeah. I've got.
Let's see.
I got a card scraper for you. Yeah, this towel is actually a white towel.
It was a white towel.
No, it is a white towel. It's just I haven't washed it in
I'm
3 years.
Glad that we took like one of my nicest towels into the
It was in the dirty laundry, and I needed a towel right now, and I still need the towel.
because I don't have old towels anywhere in this house. Apparently, I didn't notice. Anyways, let's see. So there was a question about initial flattening. Zeroloc says, I purchased a fine diamond stone to start, but it's not up to the task for establishing an initial bevel.
Yes, fine takes forever to really grind something down. That's why I usually have a coarse, the medium, and the fine, but then I also keep this one on the side, which is an extra, I think it's extra coarse? No, this one's just extra coarse, which I think is their coarsest diamond plate. And so I don't use this one very often. I only use this if I have a nick or I have something I need to grind out of the steel. So I keep this one separately for that. But I don't use it that often. So yes, if you're going to be regularly restoring tools or reestablishing bevels, getting an extra coarse is a very good thing to have. And again, if you want to see those, I have a link to them down below, actually, in the description here.
Feel free to edit that down to a normal person-sized question.
What's that?
Hang on. Okay, I got 3 things I'm looking at. Hang on. So we're to the point where we're at like ones. So I'm gonna let you decide which one you want, because I've had requests for a corner chisel, I've had a request for a bowl gouge, and I've had, because I think we've got to the other ones, request for carving, chisel repair, and sharpening. So I'm not sure.
Carving, chisel.
Oh, and the draw knife. That was the other one.
Draw knife. I'll probably do that one, actually. Just to answer a couple things. Carving chisels, I'm probably going to be doing a live next week or the week after, somewhere in there. My mother has a set of chisels that I purchased for her at a Midwest Tool Collectors meet. And they need to be restored and cleaned up. So we're actually probably going to be doing an entire video dedicated to carving gouges, V-tools, how do you sharpen them, how do you restore them, how do you clean them, and doing it in a live. And my mother will be here. It'll be a lot of fun.
Is that what we're going to do before the Mrs. Wright versus Mrs. Wright
probably
challenge?
So we had that. What was the other ones?
There was a bowl gouge.
Bowl gouge, yes. I have an entire video on how do you sharpen turning tools. And the traditional, well, not the traditional, the current conventional method is to use a grinder to grind down your bowl gouge. And you get a really rough grind on there. But, oh well, you're in a power turner, you're no problem. Whereas if you want to hand tool clean them off, I have paddles that I use. Little DMT diamond paddles. And these are what I sharpen my bowl gouge or other turning tools with. I have an entire video on that. If you want to see that, how do you sharpen turning tools, if you type in Wood by Wright, sharpen turning tools, it'll come up.
I guess skewed blades is the other one I missed.
A skew blade is the exact same as a regular chisel. It's just at an angle.
So we're going to talk about
don't think about it.
Okay.
Just do it the exact same you do with a chisel.
There you go.
A lot of people really like to complicate it. Just don't complicate it. Just grab the chisel and sharpen it. I know
Y'all are throwing things out now.
Painful,
Come on.
but,
Stop throwing things out now.
A corner chisel, actually, I want to do that here soon, but this one is nowhere near sharpening yet, because I'm going to be doing some timber framing here soon, and so we will be actually making this one work well, but I don't want to do that right yet. Let's do a draw knife. Wow, I'm having issues. Now, with a draw knife, usually what I'm going to do is I treat it like an axe. I sharpen it much like an axe, and I'm going to pull out this. And rather than taking the tool to the sharpening stone, I'm going to take the sharpening stone to the tool. And I'm going to make sure I hit my microphone a lot so that you can hear it. Actually, I'm going to have to start with a coarser one. Ta-da, there it goes. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the stone and I'm going to run it in a spiral pattern. Let me bring this over to this camera a little bit better. There we go. Number 2. And I'm going to do it in a spiral pattern here. And I'm holding it up against my chest, kind of like a violin in my stomach. And this allows me to then see the scratches immediately. Just like that. And I can see the scratches as I'm working them. And I can see spots like here where it's not hitting. The last person to sharpen this actually did it with a grinder, and so there's a spout here that was gouged out and a spot here that's high. So actually, I'm probably going to go back to the extra coarse. And this also then lets you see what angle you're at, because if all of your scratches are on the blade, on the very bevel, that means you're holding it up too high. If all your scratches in the back, you're holding it down too low. And I'm just going to go up through the grits like that. Coarse, medium, and fine. This one's going to need a little bit more work right now, so I'm probably not going to have the time to do it. And then I'm going to take a strop and clean it off. Should sound really familiar. Just take your time. And a draw knife can be made really darn sharp, like shave your hair sharp. Or most of the time, they're not that sharp. They're still a rough tool. But sharpenable, if that's
sharpenable.
Yes. And then I'm going to do the exact same thing on the back, except for this one, the previous owner pounded in the back, and so this is all mushroomed over here. You can see someone actually was hitting the back of this. So I should probably take this and grind out that shmoo.
Shmoo.
Yes. But the back is going to be done the exact same way. Coarse, medium, fine, and then on to the strop. And that is how I'm going to do it. This one I'm going to have to spend a good bit more time on because it really is not in good condition. I just purchased this one, so actually I need to sharpen that here soon. But yeah, that's basically what I'm going to do. I'm going to hold it up against my chest, in my gut, and then take the stone to it, sharpen it up. Don't overthink it. Just get to 10.
All right. I don't know if this would be a quick one, but I had someone throw out hook knife.
Ooh, that would be a good one. Just a second. Make sure I get these in the right slots. Let me grab my hook knife here. Now, a hook knife, I kind of.
And then we're going to close the voting.
Yes. Now, after this, Sarah's going to come over here and sharpen a card scraper. Now, with a hook knife, I usually view it as a carving tool. So if I don't let the hook knife get dull, I'm always going to be sharpening it. And so basically most of the time I'm just going to be doing it on a strop. And this is going to look a lot like sharpening a gouge, because really a hook knife is just a gouge. And why is that not popping in? There we go. So let me zoom in here so you can see. Camera, there we go. And a hook knife is just a gouge where the blade, the handle is, rather than being behind the blade, the handle is beside the blade. It's really good for carving out the inside of a spoon or something like that. But I'm going to use it basically the exact same way I do with a gouge. And I'm going to be sharpening on here. I'll start at one side, and I'll just bring it around, holding it at that bevel, all the way around. And then on the inside, it becomes a bit of a pain, because to use the strop on the inside, you have to kind of work it like this. But with a little bit of time, and a little bit of practice, you can buff out the inside of the hook knife as well. And then you've got a really nice sharp knife. And as long as you are occasionally sharpening it, just taking it to the strop and not letting it get dull, it will treat you well for a long time. The problem is you have to take it back to the plates. You'll be doing that exact same movement on the plates. And so most of the time when it's up here by the head, I'm going to be keeping a finger back in here, sort of like on the back of a blade. But then if I get out here towards the point of the hook knife, I'm going to roll it over and I'm going to use my other hand to keep pressure on that side. And just have a little bit of fun here. And this is addictive.
I say, while you're doing that, I have a John Wawrysh. I don't know, it's a cool last name. Ever forge your own tools?
I have not gotten into blacksmithing. I would like to, but I do not have a forge at hand. I've done some small heat treating and tempering that when I'm making a tool, if I'm like resurfacing a tool, but not gotten into much actual blacksmithing. So, you want to sharpen a card scraper?
I can't wait. Alan's been waiting this whole time.
Thank you, Alan.
So I have to talk to Alan's wife for a second. Because apparently she's saying that he's spending too much time. So here's the thing, Mrs. Smith. He's staying home if he's a woodworker. And you may actually get something built on the side. Just going to put that out there. I've said my piece. And we're cool, so come on.
We are very cool.
We're very cool.
Here, let me get this out of here. So you have some space to work.
I've said it for all those
Where did I
who
put that
have
one? Here it is.
significant others who may...
Okay. So this one, I prepared it on the stone, and so you can actually use the burnisher.
You gotta remember, I probably wasn't paying attention at all because I was watching the comments.
So what I'm going to do is, here, actually, slide over that way. I'm going to turn this camera on so that we can show this one more time. Yeah, it's in there. Good.
Can you see me now?
That way they can see your belly.
It's very white right now.
So I'm going to put this in here. I actually put the corner of it into the bench, and so I can hold it like that. And that just makes it a little easier to hold on to. I'm going to keep this at 90 degrees to the card and slide down the card 10 strokes or so.
Okay.
And then I'm going to take it from 90 degrees, show you guys to see, and I'm going to tip it like 10 degrees or so.
Okay.
Just a little bit, not much. And I'm going to slide it forward like I did before, but rather than just sliding it forward, I'm actually going to pull it away from the card as well. So if I start up here, by the time I get down to the end, I'm at here.
Okay. I'm so cold, I'm trying not to shake right now.
And so what that first one did is it kind of mushroomed the top down, and this is pulling that mushroom into a hook off the side. And then I flip it over, do the same thing on this side. And you can feel tiny, tiny little burr.
Oh, one bar. I'm sorry, it's just gonna always be in my...
So now,
no one said anything about the commercial. I know you all are as old as us, if not older. Come on, people.
This is how I refinish my bench.
Peanut butter. That's all I'm gonna say. Peanut butter.
So you can burnish this side.
I can't wait. All right. Oh, that's heavier than I expected.
Yeah, it's a what's the word I'm looking for? Carbide steel. There we are.
That doesn't.
It's heavier than. Yeah.
It's just heavier than it looks.
So at first 90 degrees to the plate, and you want to be putting pressure down onto the card. Just get taller.
To say my step stool's not in here because of cleaning out the shop, and then
No, do a few more 90 degrees.
More 90 degrees.
Like 10 or so strokes.
9, 8, 7. I feel like I should be wearing high heels. 5, I think.
She got distracted by high heels.
I'm so ADD. It's not even funny.
Okay, then at a slight angle, yeah, just like that. Except for right at the end, yeah, that last time you kind of lifted it up like this.
Like a surigami.
So just keep it down. And pull it out. That's a little steep of an angle.
Okay.
So like there. Now, see how you're getting it down at like 45? You want to keep it up like there. Because because you can turn it. Well, no, like it should be like that much of an angle. So not like that. But
Okay.
like
Okay.
that.
Hang on. I'm starting too high then.
Yeah, there you go.
Ah.
Because I mean, you can do it whatever angle you want, but whatever angle you turn it at is making it harder.
I'm just making it too
to curl.
Oh, cute. Hands on so cute.
She is a cute. That's why I married her.
This is what happens when you put me in this camera. Okay.
Okay, just like that, only a little bit more pressure and a couple more strokes.
Yeah, it's easy for him to say. Nate?
Yeah.
Okay.
Close enough. You feel it. Yeah, there you go.
Oops, sorry.
So now you take the card and you turn it over like this and you do that same angle on this side.
I don't know why I want to make it like a violin, I think. Not that I play violin, I'm a flute player. I gotta put my flute arm out. That's a bad thing. Like that?
Yeah, close enough. So then let's see how you did. Yeah,
you're gonna make it look good just because you're gonna put enough pressure on it.
Well, no, the thing, let me show you.
Well, you've also been
is that
scraping it.
What happens is the angle, if this angle is too steep like this, you just turn your hook over further, which isn't a problem. It just means that your working angle, rather than being up here, see it's not catching anything up here, you're going to have to bend it down all the way down like this. So you're almost flat on the table to pull that hook. Because your hook is so far over, it's got to be far enough for it to engage. If you lift it up too high, the hook doesn't engage. But then I bring it down, and then it catches on.
Would it eventually flatten out? Thank you. On its own.
No, the difference is the hook, the farther out it goes, the weaker it becomes. So if you're bending it all the way down here, you're probably going to break that hook off early. Whereas if you can keep that hook somewhere up here, then the hook is going to last longer. That make sense?
Yes. Kind of. Okay.
Cool.
I want to catch up on the comments.
Oh, you're going to catch up on the comments?
Yes. All hail. Yes.
Yeah.
I'll read it. It's free for all. No one's manning the chat. I'm wondering if she's wearing here. She looks tired. No, I was pretending, Alan. I was pretending. Platform clogs. No, I'd break my neck.
Now, sharpening a card scraper is something that anyone can do once they find the method that works for you. And it's a lot about learning how to hold the tool and keeping that angle consistent. Because if your angle is at this angle, and then the next stroke it's at this angle, and the next stroke it's at this angle, then you're going to be having issues with how that comes out. And there are some people who just turn it with it perfectly flat. And they'll actually pull it out across, keeping it perfectly flat. It works just as well.
They said to put it in the vise to better concentrate on the angles.
Yeah, some people like that. I find I prefer it like that.
They weren't saying it for you. They were saying it for
me.
me.
Let me show you.
They know you can do it.
Yeah, a lot of people do like to... Oop, camera's not... Over here. Down. Down. I said down camera. There you go. And so this way, you can actually have both hands on here and run it across here, keeping it flat. And then you can have both hands on here, sliding it out. This also allows you to put a little bit more pressure on it. But it's one more tool you have to have in place, and it just takes a little bit longer. But yeah, that is probably easier for people to learn to have it in there, so you're not having to hold it as well. But
Thanks
I just
for
find
you
it
guys
quicker.
for looking out for me, because I get the accelerated version apparently at home.
Yeah, I like to try the hard way. That's just my method. But yeah. So unless anyone has any particular questions,
that fulfilled the super chat, Alan.
Thanks, Alan. If you have any particular questions, go ahead and throw them in the chat. Otherwise, we'll be wrapping it up here soon. If you do like this kind of open-ended video, let me know. We might do something like this.
Woo! The chair's rolling away.
And I would love to find a better voting method.
Never sharpener.
YouTube used to have a good one, but they stopped doing it.
What did they stop doing?
The voting method. Because they used to have a whole separate thing where you could make,
so cold here.
Rather than just open comments, they had questions that you could put in, and then you could vote up people's questions, which was phenomenal. And then they stopped allowing it to happen, which is annoying. But one of these days we'll find a better method. So, yes, some people will use just a screwdriver to do it, but you have to be careful because a lot of screwdrivers are softer, and the softer steel of the screwdriver won't burnish the card scraper because it might end up being softer than the card scraper itself. You can use any steel you want. I like to use a carbide rod. I used to use a knife steel like you have in your kitchen. Works perfectly fine. As long as the steel you're using is harder than your card scraper, it will work. The harder the steel is, like the carbide, which is incredibly hard, the faster your burr will turn. So that's one of the reasons why I like a carbide, because it makes it far more efficient to turn a burr on a card scraper. But if anyone has any questions in this, I do have an entire video on sharpening a card scraper, as well as a video on making a curved card scraper. So you can make one to fit whatever profile. And that's actually one of the fun things about a card scraper is if you're doing molding or some rounded profile and you want it to stay sharp, if you take sandpaper to it, you're going to dull out your sharp edges. Where if you make a card scraper, you can actually shape a card scraper to be precisely the same profile. So you can scrape just as well as you'd sand, but keeping a really sharp edge. So card scrapers.
All right, back to the card scraper for a second. Kevin Rich asks, how long does the sharpening last on card scrapers?
Depends on a lot of things. Depends on the size of the burr you put on it. The bigger the burr on this, the better the chance it's going to break off. And if I'm working with a really big burr, like if I just take a file and I run it down the file a few times, keeping it at 90 degrees, that puts a big burr on this. And I can use that burr to go. So if I'm just removing stock, if I'm cleaning out epoxy, rather than sharpening it with a burnisher, I'm just going to sharpen it with a file and continuously put that big burr on there. The problem with the big burr is that it breaks off. And so I'm probably going to end up every 10, 15 minutes or so going back and regrinding in the burrs on all the edges of my card scraper. If I'm getting a really fine burr, where I'll just do like 5 or 6 strokes with a burnisher, that fine burr will last a long time, but it only stays really nice and clean. So if I want to get a nice sheen on the top of something, I'll only get like 10 to 15 strokes with a card scraper before that burr starts to dull off. And so after 10 to 15 strokes, I'll grab my burnisher and rub it down a few times, and then get another 10 to 15 strokes, grab the burnisher, rub it down a few times. And then after reburnishing with this 6 or 7 times, then I take it back to the stones and refile the edges and then burnish it down again. And that's what you have to do to get that really, really fine edge. But for 90% of my work, I'm going to put a little bit heavier edge on it with the burnisher, and that will give me 10 to 15 minutes worth of work on a card. If I'm like using one of my blue wood by Wright cards, which you can buy on my website, by the way.
Oh, shameless plug! Shameless plug.
I'll do, because there's four edges to this long card, so I can put a hook.
There really are 4 edges?
Well, there's 8 if you want to use the outsides. But I'll do the long edges, and I'll put all 4 hooks on this so that I can scrape one side, and once that dials off, then I kind of move over to the side of the card scraper, and I'll use a little bit there, and then I'll use it over here, and I'll flip it over and use the other side, and you can go through. It can last you quite a while. Yeah, and it also depends on the wood you're working with and other consistencies. There's a lot of differences in types of card scrapers, so telling how long it's going to last is kind of a hard thing to do.
Okay, and then Gecko just asked about a 80M card scraper?
80 mil card scraper.
Yeah, sure.
That's a really thick card scraper. That's a lot thicker than I would normally use. I think mine are 35 mil. But yeah.
Hang on. I'm hearing
someone's
sound.
Whining. Yeah, if that's what I'm thinking.
I thought I was hearing crying, but I must.
I like them. I don't like the really, really thin, flexible ones. I like a medium that's still thumb flexible, but still somewhat stiff. So personal preference. Anything else?
Oh well, there can always be more because they like to
yeah.
do that to me at the end of a show, is throw a bunch of questions. But
yeah, Japanese saws. You can sharpen Japanese saws, but you need specialty files for them.
Jump topic.
And that is a
I didn't see
yeah.
that.
They're sharpening Japanese saws is difficult, and a lot of Japanese saws actually have impulse hardened teeth. And so once that happens, then you need like a diamond to sharpen them, and it's just not worth the time. And so that's why a lot of them actually make them with replaceable blades.
And there you go. All right, there. I told you, and they're going to keep asking questions, so you can go back through and answer those ones.
Do you put a burr on a cabinet scraper? Now there is a good argument is that some people just get a sharp edge on it. I do actually put a burr on my cabinet scraper. I know I am of the burr crowd. But yes, I actually have a video on sharpening card scrapers if you want to see that as well. So, anything else, or should I wrap it down?
Please, can we?
Okay, let's wrap it up.
It's not that I don't enjoy this, but my back is starting to spasm.
Cool. Well, if you have an idea of something you would like us to do in another live, let me know. I think we might be doing a joint next week. Sorry. I should wrap this
I
up
just
now.
got it. A little slow tonight.
So until next time, thanks for watching.
Bye. Hang on. I can't find the button. Here we go.
Where's the button?